The waiter hadn't finished pouring the water when my mom made her announcement. "Your kids can eat when they get home," she said. She flicked her wrist like she was shooing a fly, tossed 2 paper napkins across the table. My daughters looked down. Then up at me. Across from us, my sister's girls were already unwrapping gold-foiled takeout boxes, pasta, tiramisu, all plated like something delicate. Her husband laughed too loud. "Should have fed them first," he said. I felt something coil in my chest. Cold. Familiar. I smiled anyway, leaned toward my girls, whispered, "Copy that." The waiter came back with his notepad. I stood up. But before that moment, you have to understand the story behind it. How we got to a table where 2 little girls learned exactly where they stood. That in this family, there's an A-list and everyone else claps from the sidelines. My name's Connor. I'm 36. I've been walking on eggshells since I was old enough to notice who got the bigger slice. I have 2 daughters, Nora, 10, and Hazel, 8. The best parts of me. And a wife, Laura, who should have run for the hills, but stayed. My family isn't just dramatic. They're a slow-motion train wreck that insists it's still on the rails. Melissa, my sister, is 38. 2 years older, lifelong princess. If she spilled juice, I got scolded for distracting her. If she forgot homework, I was blamed for not reminding her. She didn't just get the bigger slice of cake. She got the stand. She married well. Marcus, yacht face, loud laugh, confidence like cologne. They live in a 4-bedroom suburban dream with a dog that gets Christmas presents from my parents. My girls? Still waiting on a birthday card. Mom Margaret, Olympic-level selective generosity. Lavish brunches for Melissa's kids. Just because packages. Church group brag reels about her perfect daughter. For me? You should budget better, Connor. Budgeting doesn't buy love. Or grandparents who remember names. So that dinner, it wasn't a fluke. It was a final act after years of small humiliations. Tight smiles. Swallowed pride. I used to think being the bigger person meant staying quiet. But swallowing pride turns bitter over time. It becomes poison. Mom invited us out. Said, family dinner, her treat. Trendy fusion place, waiters in leather aprons, bottled water in glass so small it looked decorative. Laura was skeptical. You really think this is a good idea? Maybe she's trying, I said. Trying what? Laura asked. To make our girls feel invisible again? I wanted peace. One decent night. Where my daughters didn't feel like clearance rack guests at a luxury show. We arrived early. Laura fixed the girls' hair. Hazel's braid had a bow. Nora wore her white dress, the one for special things. Mom and Melissa's crew arrived 10 minutes late, laughing about a TikTok I wasn't tagged in. Melissa air-kissed me, turned to Laura. Love your top, she said. Didn't know they brought that brand back. Marcus ordered wine before the waiter spoke. Melissa bragged about Vermont camps and Italy trips. I poured water for the girls, careful not to spill the Alps. Mom leaned into the waiter. Oh, we've pre-ordered for them, she said, nodding at Melissa's girls. The chef knows. I looked at my daughters flipping through the kids' menu. You didn't order for Nora and Hazel? I asked. Mom blinked. Well, I assumed you'd bring snacks. They don't need a $30 meal. They're kids. They just came from practice, I said. They're hungry. Oh, I'm sure they'll survive, she said, laying her napkin across her lap like a queen. They can eat when they get home. Then she tossed the paper napkins. Thin, wrinkled, from her purse. Like crumbs for dogs. Hazel's hand found mine. Small. Unsure. Marcus laughed again. Should have fed them first. I leaned down. Whispered. Copy that. And stood up. The waiter froze when I stood up. I do not blame him. You do not often see a guy rise in the middle of dinner while everyone else pretends the air is not heavy with something ugly. "Everything all right, sir?" he asked. I nodded, calm. "Would you mind giving us a minute?" He gave a polite nod, that practiced kind waiters give when they smell trouble but do not ask questions, and slipped toward the kitchen. I stayed on my feet, feeling every stare in the room. I was trying to decide if I was about to say something in front of everyone or just take my family and leave. Nora still held her menu, like she was unsure if she was supposed to keep pretending she belonged at this table. Hazel leaned close to Laura, whispering. Laura's face had gone hard, that quiet kind of anger that looks like steel. I knew that look well. One more wrong word, and she would torch the place. But she held it in. For me. For our girls. "Connor, sit down," my mother said, sighing like I had embarrassed her in front of her high society friends. Melissa was already back on her phone, pretending to scroll while her daughters fed each other little bites of truffle macaroni and cheese from designer boxes. Those meals had been pre-ordered. Packed up in advance. Not by accident. Boxed, like my mother had already decided they would not be sitting at the same table as my girls. Like this was planned before we even walked in. I sat down slowly. Not because she told me to, but because I needed a better angle. The moment passed. The waiter came back. Everyone ordered. Melissa's family spoke like regulars, listing dishes they had probably memorized from a preview menu. Laura and I helped the girls choose the two cheapest things available: a margarita flatbread and a side of fries. We did not want a scene. Not yet. I needed time to figure out if I was being oversensitive or if I was finally seeing things exactly as they were. Turns out, I was late to the truth. The meal unraveled fast. My mother spent the appetizer round asking Melissa's daughters about every award, recital, and camp they had done. One had just played a piano recital. My mother pulled out her phone, showing off the video loud enough for the whole restaurant to hear. Melissa smiled like she was on stage. My daughters leaned in, curious, trying to watch. My mother never turned the screen toward them. When the song ended, she smiled to herself. "She's gifted," she said. "Not every child has that." I opened my mouth, ready to say something, but Laura touched my hand under the table. Later, she whispered. Then came the talk about school awards. Melissa's youngest had won a reading competition. Applause all around. My mother acted like it was breaking news. I waited for her to bring up Nora. She didn't. Nora had just been named Student of the Month for kindness. I knew my mom had seen the photo I texted, Nora holding her certificate, beaming like sunshine. So I brought it up. "That reminds me," I said lightly. "Nora just got Student of the Month at her school. For kindness." My mother didn't even blink. "That's nice," she said, sipping her wine. Then she turned to Melissa's husband. "Did you see the video I sent of the dog that barks the alphabet?" Laura's hand tightened around mine. Hard. I could feel her pulse through her fingers. I glanced at Nora. The way her smile faded, not all at once, but piece by piece, hit me like a gut punch. That slow realization that she wasn't interesting enough to be seen. I knew that feeling. I'd lived it for years. The food came out. Looked good, sure. But my appetite was gone. The waiter set down the girls' plates, the flatbread, the fries, and his eyes flicked toward the boxed meals in front of Melissa's daughters. For half a second, he understood something was off. Then he moved on, like professionals do. Halfway through, my mother leaned toward Melissa, smiling like she had a secret. "Should we tell them?" she asked. My fork paused midair. "Tell us what?" Melissa grinned. "We're taking the girls to Disneyland this fall. Surprise trip." Just like that. My stomach flipped. Laura straightened. "You're taking your girls?" she asked, slowly, like she wanted to be sure she'd heard right. Melissa shrugged, casual. "Yeah. Mom and I planned it last week. Flights are booked." I looked at my mother. She was already nodding. I figured it would be too expensive for you, she said matter-of-factly. And with your work schedule and everything. I stared at her. You planned a trip for the grandkids and didn't tell us? She laughed lightly. It's not a family trip. It's a treat for the girls. Laura's voice went sharp, cold. Our girls are your granddaughters too. I'm sure they'll get to go someday, my mother said, waving her hand like it was nothing. It's not a big deal. Nora looked down. Hazel blinked fast, trying not to cry. That twist in my chest came back: anger, shame, the stupid hope that this night could have gone differently. Melissa smiled, loving the moment. We'll take lots of pictures, she said. We'll send them to you. That was it. The breaking point. I stood up again. Laura did not stop me this time. I need a minute, I said. I walked outside, hands shaking. The night was warm, but my body felt cold, that hollow kind of cold that starts in your chest and spreads when you finally accept something you have been avoiding for years. Because that is what it was. The last realization. It was not shock that hit me, not even the cruelty. It was the fact that I had known it was coming and still walked straight into it. Still let my daughters believe they were part of something that was never meant to include them. And the truth? This was not new. This was just another replay. I remembered birthdays where Melissa got the big show balloons, a banner, a fancy cake from some bakery that spelled her name in frosting curls. I got a folded card that said love, Mom, and a $10 bill inside. No cake. No candles. I remembered school nights where she bragged about Melissa's barely passing grades in math while ignoring the trophies I brought home from science fairs. Boys do not need that much attention, she would say. Do not be jealous, be helpful. I told myself it would be different with my kids. I thought being a father would give me some kind of reset, a way to write a better story. But you cannot rewrite a story when the author refuses to change the ending. I stood outside for a while, just breathing. Then Laura came out. Arms folded. Jaw tight. You all right? She asked. I shook my head. No. But I know what to do. Her eyebrow lifted. And what does that mean? I did not answer. Not yet. Because payback, the kind that is earned, never shows up in one explosion. It builds. It waits. And I had finally found the match. When I walked back in, Melissa was laughing at something Marcus said. My mom swirled her wine like she was the center of her own universe. My daughters sat close together, quiet, eating their flatbread like they were afraid to break the spell of behaving perfectly. I looked at them, those patient, soft-hearted girls, and made a silent promise. This was the last time. I sat back down. My mom glanced at me, still wearing that same smug calm. You all right, dear? She asked. I smiled. More than all right. Then the waiter came to ask about dessert. And that was when everything started to turn. He stood beside the table, waiting for someone to speak. Melissa's daughters jumped in first, yelling about the chocolate dome with the caramel explosion, the kind of thing kids rehearse when they know they are getting it. My mom smirked, that familiar smirk, the one that always came right before her worst moments. I did not look away from her when I said, actually, we are going to skip dessert. The waiter hesitated, glancing at her. She waved him off with a flick of her wrist, like an actress dismissing an extra. Suit yourself, she said. But do not be surprised when the girls regret missing the best part. I smiled again, but it was just a shape my face made. My mind was already moving. This night was not ending like the others, not with me quiet and furious in the car later. No. This was where the thread finally snapped. It began with a toast. Melissa tapped her glass with a fork, that soft ting-ting-ting that demands attention, and stood with the confidence of someone who believes the spotlight naturally belongs to her. I just want to say, she began, that I'm so grateful we could all be here tonight. It's not every day we get to sit down as a family and celebrate how far we've come. Marcus rested his hand on her back, that practiced husband gesture that says, I am proud of my perfect life. Melissa smiled at my mother. Mom, thank you for putting this together. For always being there for us. For supporting our girls in everything they do. For every sleepover, every gift, every late night call when I'm losing it with homework chaos. My mother dabbed at a fake tear with her napkin. Of course, sweetheart. That is what family is for. There it was. The performance. The affection that excluded half the table. A toast for everyone except us. I saw Laura's nostrils flare. I heard Nora's fork stop halfway to her mouth. Even her 10-year-old heart understood what had just been said. Then Melissa lifted her glass. To strong women, raising strong daughters. The glasses clinked. Laura and I did not move. Silence hung in the air, sharp enough to cut through the flowers on the table. You know, I said finally, it's strange how often we all sit together and still manage to feel like strangers. Melissa blinked. What's that supposed to mean? I did not answer her. I looked at my mom. When was the last time you came to one of Nora's soccer games? She shifted. Well, you know how busy I am. But you made it to 2 of Lydia's piano recitals, I said. And 1 of Clara's ballet rehearsals. I paused. Not even a performance. A rehearsal. She gave that sharp little smile. I did not realize you were keeping score. I was not, I said quietly. But it turns out my daughters were. Nora looked at me, eyes wide, like she could not believe I was finally saying it out loud. Laura reached under the table and took her hand. Melissa rolled her eyes. Here we go. I turned to her. No, I said. Not this time. I told her she couldn't just brush it off like some petty argument. She's always been that way, like her kids are the sun, and the rest of us just spin around them, catching whatever light they throw off. I'm sorry you feel that way, she said, all calm and clinical, that fake apology people use when they don't mean it. That's not an apology, Laura muttered. Then Marcus spoke. Maybe if you put as much effort into your parenting as you do keeping score, you wouldn't feel so left out. It wasn't just the words. It was the smirk. The quiet satisfaction, like he thought he'd just won something. No one stopped him. Mom didn't. Melissa didn't. Nora's face fell. Hazel buried hers in Laura's arm. That's when it clicked, this wasn't forgetfulness or uneven affection. It was deliberate. Cruel. They didn't just overlook us. They enjoyed watching us be small. So I stood up. Pulled out my wallet. Set $200 on the table. That covers our part, I said. Mom's tone flipped, sweet again. Oh, you don't have to, this was my treat. I ignored her and turned to my girls. Come on, let's go. Nora's eyes went wide. Are we in trouble? No, sweetie, Laura said, grabbing her purse. We're just done pretending. As we walked away, Melissa scoffed. You're really making a scene? I stopped. No scene, I said. Just telling the truth out loud. Then I looked at my mom. You had a choice. You could have loved all your grandkids. You could have shown up, made them feel like they mattered. But you didn't. You picked a favorite. And the lesson you taught? That love depends on performance. Her eyes narrowed. You're being dramatic. I'm being honest, I said. And I'm finally okay with that. We left. The restaurant door clicked shut, soft sound, heavy echo. Outside, the girls were quiet. Laura stood beside me, waiting. Where are we going? Nora asked. Anywhere you want, I said. They picked ice cream, of course. Because they're still kids. Still soft, still hopeful, still able to believe sweetness can fix something bitter. We sat on a bench outside the shop, the cones melting faster than they could eat them. Laura leaned her head on my shoulder. You did the right thing, she whispered. I didn't answer. Because even though I'd finally stood up for them, it still felt like loss, the last thread of hope that maybe my family could change. But under the sadness was something steadier. Peace. Because once someone shows you who they really are, you can stop pretending not to see it. And that clarity, that was the real beginning. I just didn't know yet how bad the next chapter would be. Because 3 days later, the phone rang. 3 days of silence, long enough to fool myself into thinking maybe my words had landed. Maybe Mom would call. Maybe Melissa would feel something like guilt. Maybe someone would finally try. But no. Nothing. No texts, no calls, no check-ins. Then I saw the name, Aunt Carol. Not Mom. Not Melissa. Carol. We hadn't talked in months. Maybe a year. Connor, she said, voice tight. Did you really walk out of your mother's dinner and cause a scene? I took a breath. Hi, Aunt Carol. Nice to hear from you too. She didn't laugh. Margaret's beside herself. Melissa said you stormed out, made a speech, and stuck them with a huge bill. I paid our share, I said. Left $200. Took the girls for ice cream. That's not what your mother said. Of course it's not. Her tone softened, but it didn't help. Connor, I know things aren't always fair, but do you really think this was the way to handle it? That phrase, things aren't always fair, hit a nerve. Like fairness was the point. Like this was about the last cookie, not a lifetime of being invisible. I'm not asking for fair, I said quietly. I just want them to stop treating my kids like they don't belong. There was a pause. I understand, she said softly. But your mom's proud. She's hurt. Says you embarrassed her. Something in me cracked again. Not the loud kind, the quiet kind that changes everything. Because now they weren't just asking us to forgive. They were asking us to forget. To erase years of slights and silences, cruel comments disguised as jokes, the favoritism, the pretending. But I wasn't pretending anymore. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept seeing Nora's face when she found that Facebook post. Hazel's small voice asking if she'd done something wrong when her birthday call never came. Laura's hand gripping mine in that restaurant, steady, brave, while I finally said what I'd swallowed for years. I stared at the ceiling until dawn and made a decision. Not just to leave, but to make it permanent. Not out of anger. Out of love. Because love isn't conditional. It doesn't keep score or vanish when it's inconvenient. Real love stays. The next morning, I started small. Intentional. Quiet. I took Nora and Hazel to the bank and opened junior savings accounts in their names. Not because they needed the money, but because I wanted them to feel seen. Plan 4. Safe. I called a therapist. Booked a session for myself. Then one for Laura and me. Then asked the girls if they wanted to talk to someone too. At dinner, we started having real conversations. About feelings. About family. About how sometimes the people who should love you best simply don't know how. And somewhere in those talks, we started becoming something new. A family without guilt. A home without conditions. Still, something kept tugging at me, not the need to reconcile, but to close the loop. Because walking away is power. But sometimes, justice is better. And when I learned what my mom had done with my dad's trust fund, that's when the line between peace and payback blurred completely. The first time I felt real calm again was 6 weeks after that dinner. It was a crisp Sunday, the kind that smells like leaves and clean starts. Laura and the girls were on the porch carving pumpkins, really laughing. No tension. No pity. Just joy. I stood in the doorway with coffee in hand and realized something simple but enormous. We were okay. Actually, better than okay. We were free. No more chasing her approval. No more awkward silences after the family vacations we weren't invited to. No more shrinking myself to fit her version of acceptable. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't orbiting the family's dysfunction. I was building something separate. And it was working. At first, it was small. Quiet. But real. Hazel stopped chewing her nails. Nora hummed again while doing homework, the same soft tune she used to sing before all of this made her feel small. Laura started sleeping through the night. Smiling more. One night while folding laundry, she said, "It feels like we finally got our house back." She was right. We had. But the real turning point wasn't emotional. It was financial. 2 months after that dinner, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. A lawyer. Not mine, my dad's. He explained that after my father passed, he'd set up a small trust fund for his grandkids. Not a fortune, about $60,000 total, to be split evenly when each turned 18. And Mom was the trustee. He said he'd reached out because I'd never signed or acknowledged the paperwork. Because I never got any, I said. Silence. Then, that's unusual. You're listed as a contact along with your sister. Melissa signed her side 3 years ago. Her daughters have already received early disbursements. The words hit like ice. Early disbursements? Yes, he said. And right there, something in me went very, very still.